Hello, Chamber faithful. Welcome to our second legislative update of 2022. I'm Jeremy Field, your host for this event. The Boise Metro Chamber is the only five-star accredited member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the state of Idaho. That distinction helps us to advocate and educate on issues that impact our members. The programs and services we provide support four core areas: economic vitality, advocacy, education, and member engagement. We're excited to continue to provide high-quality education content today. It, however, would not be possible without the help of our sponsors, Optum and AT&T. We'd also like to recognize our media partners, the Idaho Statesman, Idaho Press, Idaho Capital Sun, and the Idaho Education News, who help ensure this program is available to audiences throughout Idaho. And now a word from our presenting sponsor, Optum.
Right now, many people across Idaho are struggling, and I speak from experience when I say that I know the feeling of being overwhelmed with depression, anxiety, isolation, even suicidal thoughts. But I also know from experience that happiness, hope, and recovery are possible for everyone. That's what Optum Idaho's Hello Idaho is all about, creating a healing space to support good mental health in Idaho. Learn more at optumidaho.com.
My constituent.
Oh, that's great. You want to give a shout out at all?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to give a shout out at all?
Oh, hey, Mariel. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So thank you very much, Optum, for your support. Really appreciate it. We can't do this stuff without our membership, without our sponsors. So obviously, we're very grateful for that. So thank you again. Now, it's my honor to introduce some of our panel. You will see that we have Majority Leader Senator Anthon and Minority Leader Michelle Stennett from the Idaho Senate. We will soon be joined by the Majority and Minority Leaders of the House of Representatives as well, Mike Moyle and Alana Rubell. They are still debating some bills on the floor and will be with us soon. But until then, I can at least read some bios and let you know about just how impressive our panelists are today. First, let's start with Majority Leader Mike Moyle. He graduated from Meridian High School in 1983. He later attended BYU and spent his career in farming and ranching. He served on the Far West Spearmint Committee, is a former fire commissioner of Star, and previously served as the House Assistant Majority Leader. He's currently serving his 8th term. He and his wife, Jane, have 3 children, Kelsey, Jacob, and Preston. And Preston, coincidentally, is one of my favorite small towns in Idaho, a wonderful place to fish, and obviously the space of Napoleon Dynamite, which is, if anyone loves film, you'll love that movie. Next, we have Representative Alana Rubell, our minority leader, who graduated from Harvard Law School and Georgetown University. So kind of impressive stats there. She graduated from Harvard in 1997. Got her BA in American Government and English in 1994. So it's really impressive, unless of course you're a Yaley, then you don't think as much of those credentials. But she's a partner in the Boise office of Fenwick and West, one of the nation's premier law firms, focusing on technology clients. She served on the board of directors of Bogus Basin HOA since 2009 and is a founding member of the BSU Honors College Advisory Board. Her and her husband John have 4 children: Andrew, Claire, Thomas, and Evan. Next, we have, of course, our panel that's with us here today, Senator Kelly Anthon, Majority Leader. He's been an Idaho State Senator since 2015. He's a 7th generation Idahoan, which I'm really impressed with because I'm a 6th generation Idahoan raising a 7th generation. So he's already got an 8th generation. You cranked out the door. So well done, Senator. He raised them, of course, in Declo, where his family has operated a farming operation for over 100 years. He attended the University of Idaho's College of Law, which, as we like to call it, the Harvard of the West.
That's right.
That's exactly right. And was a licensed law attorney until 2012. Senator Anthon practiced law at the Rupert law firm of Robinson, Anthon, and Tribe, where as a partner he focused on municipal law, debt restructuring, and large business reorganization. He served as an appointed city attorney for several cities in Idaho and city administrator in Rupert, Idaho. Senator Kelly is fluent in Japanese, having had extensive work as a consultant for Japanese companies, and currently serves as a board member with the Mart Group LLC, a potato fresh pack and processing company, as a board member of the Southern Idaho Economic Development Council. I love those economic development councils. And as a board member for Region 4 Development Council specifically. He is a past executive board member of the Idaho Municipal Attorney Association, served 2 terms as the president of the Minidoka Healthcare Foundation, and as a member of the governing board of Intermountain Healthcare's Cassia Regional Medical Center. He's also a member of his local Rotary Club, if that weren't enough to do, and him and his wife, Jolie, have 5 children.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's just, anyway, I'll go on to my impressive comments later, or my impressive impressions later. But next we have our Senate Minority Leader, Michelle Stennett. She has her BA in International Relations, in Environmental Studies, and Romance Languages to top it off from the University of Oregon. And my son's a big Duck fan, so that's for you, Senator. Thanks so much. Additionally, she has a certificate from a university in France, and I can't pronounce it. Will you help me out, Minority Leader?
L'Université de Poitiers.
Thank you so much. I would have slaughtered that.
Certificat d'études.
I was terrified of reading that part of it, so I really appreciate you helping me.
That's quite all right.
She also has certificates of honor and appreciation from the Legislative Energy Horizon Institute at the University of Idaho, a certificate of appreciation from the American Legion, a certificate of Fire Ops 101, which I think is one of my favorite bio.
I have my cap.
It's really neat. It's one of my favorite things I've read in a bio. Certificate of graduation, Western Legislative Academy for the Council of State Government West, and Idaho delegate to Legislative Council on the River Governance, LCRG, CSG West. Idaho delegate to the Pacific Fisheries, member of the Idaho Workforce Development Council. Her committee assignments include health and welfare, resources and environment, and state affairs. So thank you so much for joining us today at the Idaho Cutthroat, or not I'm sorry, I'm getting my programs mixed up with our legislative updates. So thank you so much. Oh, and look at this. Now that I've come up from the bio, I see that we can include a Representative Alana Rubell. Were you able to join us for the reading of your bio or hear that part?
No, actually, floor is still going on, but I snuck off.
And Representative Moyle is in charge of the floor debate today, right? So We'll see him just a little bit later.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming and joining. We know that how busy it is there at the legislature, and really appreciate your time. Okay, well then let's ask our first question to our panelists. This year, the state of Idaho has experienced a record state budget surplus, and projecting states or surpluses for the next 5 years, as well as federal funding from ARPA and the infrastructure bill. There's just been a lot of stuff to do on the budget side of things. Keep track of all these funds that are coming in to do the business of the people of Idaho. The governor has spoken about the ability to lower taxes, increase funding to education, and address the backlog of infrastructure projects in the state. Now that the state tax bill has passed, House Bill 436, and the bill that created an account to bring educators under the same insurance as state employees, what are some of the big issues that you see the legislature still tackling? And of course, feel free to talk about what I just mentioned, our tax bill, what implications that has for our budget. Because I know that I've heard Representative Rubel talk on this very issue in just last week. But yeah, everything's kind of open for this first discussion, but really interested in seeing where you see things are going next. Why don't we start with Representative Rubel? Is that okay?
Sure. I made no secret of the fact that I was not a big fan of House Bill 436. And, I feel like in all my committees now, we're starting to see the fallout from it. Now, 436, $600 million tax cut, $250 million of which will be perpetual, at least probably higher as with inflation, the impact will be larger over time, and $350 million with one-time money. We are now seeing that our hands are in large part tied from being able to do some of the things we'd like to do. Certainly in terms of grocery tax repeal, I believe that is likely a non-starter this year in light of 436. With that much money, gone from the funds available, a full refund, a full elimination would be at least $200 million, depending on how you do it. Some have $250 million tags on them. We won't be able to do that in light of this. Even some other things, we were talking in my Health and Welfare Committee this morning about, they're going to try to fund Head Start and some increases on reimbursement rates for mental health care providers and home assistance folks and all that. They're going to do it with federal money, but they're concerned about what do we do when the ARPA money runs out and we're going to have to turn to general funds. And will there be enough general funds left in light of this $250 million ongoing reduction? Not to mention, we are still the lowest funded schools in America. So I think in terms of impact on other forms of tax relief that we might have liked to do, in terms of truly picking ourselves up out of last place on education funding and addressing some of our other many needs, I'm concerned that we've tied our hands and made it impossible to meet all these other needs in light of that $600 million kind of flying out the door in the first 2 weeks of session. I would have liked to see us reorder those priorities. I would have liked to see us be sure we've addressed education funding, be sure we've addressed infrastructure, be sure we've addressed the foster care system, all the other critical things we need to do, and then see how much money we have left over, and then decide if income and corporate tax cuts are what we want to do with that money. If we truly have money left over and we want to do tax reductions, is that our first choice, or would we rather do lowering property taxes? Would we rather see paying off our bonds and levies to address those property taxes? Would we rather see eliminating grocery tax? But I feel like all of those options were foreclosed by the direction the legislature took in passing 436 first thing.
Thanks, Representative. Senator Anthon, do you want to add to that?
Sure. I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit. One of the things that we've seen consistently as we've looked at polling in Idaho, particularly through the Boise State University School of Public Policy, is that Idahoans favor income tax reductions and have for many, many years. And so it's not a surprise to me that one of the first courses of action in realizing that we have this huge surplus of state funds in the general fund is to give some of that money back to Idaho residents and businesses. And I think it's been mentioned before, but in my neck of the woods down in southern Idaho, when we compete for business, when we compete in economic development, we are competing with Utah. And I will just tell you, when you're competing with a state like Utah, there's a lot of money coming in on the table that they offer in Utah that we just can't do through our programs and through our incentives in Idaho. So this kind of reduction in the tax rate on the corporate level really does make us more attractive. I think it will benefit the state of Idaho. And what I've seen over the years is, as you make the environment for business more attractive, you actually see the net effect of increasing the prosperity in the state. And that's what we're experiencing. I mean, we have done a good job in keeping what businesses need, and that is predictability, keeping taxes low, regulation only as necessary, and making sure that the incentives we offer are not draining the bank, but they require performance. And all those pieces together are why we are seeing the kind of prosperity that we're seeing right now. And I think it's a good course of action.
Thanks, Senator Anthon. Senator Stennett, would you like to add anything on the tax relief front?
Yes, please. The Boise State University Public Policy Survey also, on parity, equally, said that Idahoans wanted property tax relief. And it is, property tax relief has been the top communication that we've all received with this in this building for the past 4 or 5 years. We've been in this trajectory of growth, which has accelerated these last couple of years. And it is really a burden on the people of Idaho, particularly those that have been the fabric of our communities, have been here for a long time, our fixed income folks who are our seniors and our veterans and people with disabilities. We need to do something meaningful for that. And so I would agree that we have this income that's come in because of our growth and some of the policies that we've done. And we are bursting at the seams with all our savings accounts. And so this is a unique opportunity to really be talking about infrastructure and property tax relief. Right now, we're 49th in the nation and how poorly our K through 12 school facilities are. I mean, they're crumbling. Do we want our children to be in buildings like that? There are plenty of things that we could be looking at that are a one-time opportunity every 40 years where things are becoming antiquated or not meeting the load or not meeting the growth. And this is where we should be focusing our attention. If you look at Wallet Hub, one of these think tanks that goes through all over the country about how Idaho ranks with its taxes, we're 36th, and we have 3 tax tiers compared to some of the states that were surveyed in that study. And it means that we haven't. Everybody keeps thinking that we're not competitive. You're doing well if you have 3 of the tax structures, and your tax burden's 36th in the nation. Can it always improve? Yes. To the detriment that you have crumbling systems? No. And so, a tax cut of some sort, I would have been a fan of, but there is much to do. We have the property tax relief that was mentioned. We have roads and bridges, and I know some of that infusion is coming in from federal monies. But we know how expensive a bridge is. So Senator Anthon's in an area where they're going to need to put a brand new bridge over the Snake River Canyon, and that is no inexpensive adventure. And you talk about emergency services, where both Ilana and I, Representative Rubel and I, are on the Office of Performance Evaluations Joint Legislative Oversight Committee, and the studies about how we are managing our emergency services and emergency responders within our local governments is just, it's dire. They don't have enough people. They can't keep the volunteers because they're retiring out. They can't afford to employ. It's taking an hour in some of these areas for an emergency ambulance to arrive to them. There's just so much that is immediate needs to the people of Idaho that we should be addressing with the resources we have right now in this session.
Thanks so much, everybody. And just so that our viewers know, and obviously we want to hear all these perspectives, the Chamber Policy Committee voted to support House Bill 436 that brought those tax cuts with the primary incentive to make us more competitive, like Senator Anthon said, with the state of Utah on the corporate tax side. When you do economic development, Senator Stennett pointed out that we have a very, as far as where we are in tax burden, very attractive. All of that is part of the analysis that businesses look at when they're looking where to relocate. But our number one competitor for economic development when we bring businesses to the state of Idaho is Salt Lake. And so that was our main, for those reasons and others, the committee did support that. And I just wanted to let everybody know about that. But really appreciate those perspectives. Again, Representative Moyle is currently on the floor, and he's helping lead the discussion for the House today. House Bill 436 was his bill. Maybe we'll give him a chance to talk about that later, because if you've never had the opportunity to listen to Representative Moyle talk about tax relief, it's a thing to behold. So we'll put that pin in there later. But let's talk about, we talked about property taxes, and there are a couple of vehicles that have been suggested now for how we can bring down property tax relief. Do any of you see any of those ideas advancing in the session? And who'd like that?
I can start if it's okay. I mean, certainly, I think there is. I've always thought, and there certainly is in the Senate, universal agreement that some of the low-hanging fruit that can easily be done with regard to property taxes should be done. And in fact, the Senate has let out on a number of proposals over the years with regard to circuit breaker in particular. So now we're talking about property taxes that affect the most vulnerable populations in Idaho, those who are widowed or widowers, those who are disabled, veterans of the country, the blind, and so on and so forth. That program needs an overhaul. The Senate has already passed a bill that would overhaul that property tax program for those vulnerable populations. I understand the House has one as well. I've sat on the property tax study group for 2 years, and what you realize as you go through those meetings is how complicated the property tax issue is on a statewide basis. Certainly the property tax issues here in Treasure Valley are pronounced. They need to be dealt with. I do have hope that the legislature will provide more legislation to assist. When you go into my district in South Central Idaho, what you're finding is not the same situation. So in the little town of Rupert, as an example, you're seeing the tax levy rates go down. because as we've seen economic growth and the expansion of the tax base, if your home value is going up, that means your property tax might be going up. But otherwise, all the conditions are right for a very favorable property tax situation. And so that's the real challenge of it, I think, in trying to find a solution that fits all over the state.
That's perfect. Representative Moyle, we've discussed about how you had responsibilities running the House floor earlier today, and so we're really grateful for you for coming on such short notice from that responsibility.
Yeah, I apologize for being a little late today, but
oh yeah, no apologies needed. We understand where you're coming from. We're just so glad that you could join us. We just got into the topic of property tax, but actually this would be a good opportunity for us to ask you. Our first question today was on tax relief, and we talked about what is now the law of Idaho, House Bill 436. Would you like to speak to why you brought that legislation and the issues you were trying to address with it?
436 being, which one are we talking about? Because I got 10 of them.
Oh, I know, you got plenty. This is the one the governor signed.
Okay, got it. The income tax relief.
Exactly.
We met before the session with some of the governor's staff trying to find a path forward. There's a lot of money coming back to the coffers this year, and you saw that. Idaho has a real problem in that before the passage of that bill, you're the 8th highest income tax rate in the nation. That moves you to number 10, which is kind of concerning. To give you an example, if you, before that bill moved from California, you were making about $100,000 and moved to Idaho, you were paying more taxes. Now with the passage of that bill, you pay the same as you did in California. When we look at income tax rates, it's one of the number one drivers of driving business away from Idaho because our rates are so high. So we were trying to accomplish several things with that bill. One, get the rates down where we're more competitive with surrounding states to bring business in and encourage them to stay here. Idaho has a tendency to create businesses and then they leave or sell because of our rates. And the other thing was to get the money back in the economy. The rebate of $350 million is a big deal. If you look at what happened last year, we did the same thing last year. We lowered rates, consolidated bans like last year, and we put the money back in the economy. Whenever you put that kind of money back in the economy, that $350 million plus the relief on the other side on the income tax rates, that's going to drive spending, that's going to drive the economy. It's going to flow, it's going to roll, and it's going to come back to the state of Iowa. We saw that last year, and hopefully we'll see that again next year with this bill. But it was good to have the support of the Senate, the governor, and everybody on the same team to get it done early so it didn't get caught up in all the other things that go on down here at the Capitol.
Well, I appreciate those comments. We always like to encourage people that, you got those when you get those rebates, go ahead and go buy local. Support our Idaho.
Thank you, man. It rolls.
Exactly. But thank you for adding to that discussion, Representative. Now, going on with our discussion on where we might be going with property taxes, the solutions that have been put out there, and how we might address that. Senator Stennett, would you like to take the next stab at that?
Yes, as was mentioned by Senator Anthon, the property tax relief is more complicated than people think, and there are many moving parts. So besides the circuit breaker, which all local governments said what we did last year required a fix, and the Senate bill, I believe, brought us up to 200%. We were at 125, which meant many of those fixed income people that Senator Anthon mentioned, your seniors, your veterans, people with disabilities, fell off and were not able to get their assistance. And so we're trying to bring that back so that we can get them back on the rolls, and that's at 200%. So I'm hoping that we don't do any less, because then that at least makes us back to even. The other thing, which I've been trying to work on, but I know there are many other efforts out there to give some relief, but would have been nice to use some of those resources to perhaps come up with a formula for those school districts that, as it pertains to bonds and levies. The idea is that those that didn't pass a bond or levy would be able to have an infusion of resources for discretionary stuff, perhaps like for facilities or maintenance or teachers, which we're having such a hard time keeping teachers right now, for their use. And those that do have bonds and levies, the greater percentage would go to pay it off. That would be a huge relief to property taxes and to our residents who are paying those. As an example, just some creative programs that we need to be thinking about. I know that there is so much out there that is being debated, but I really haven't seen anything meaningful that's gained traction between the houses to give some meaningful property tax relief.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Moyle, would you like to go next, and then we'll let Representative Rubel bat cleanup.
All right, sure. Let's talk about property taxes. There's several bills out there you'll see in the next coming weeks that deal with property tax relief. One of them, Senator Anthon and I have been working on together, trying to make sure we don't do any harm, that deals with taking public defenders off the tax roll and eliminating one of the levies, which will have tax relief in all the counties across the state, which will help. It doesn't go far enough, but it helps. Another one you saw today we introduced in the House deals with revenue sharing. Currently in the state of Idaho, we send back about 11.5% of all the sales tax we collect to the local taxing entities, your city, your county, your fire districts, your highway districts. That was about a $23.5 million increase last year. The bill we proposed today proposes to take half of whatever that increase is and provide it for tax relief. It looks like next year it's going to be 50 million. And that's a lot of money. If we did the bill, would keep them harmless, but any new revenues from revenue sharing from the state to the local entity, those local taxing districts would require tax relief of half of it. So it's another 25 million. When we talk about property taxes, though, it's really hard because when you push one place, it moves somewhere else. So there's some ideas, and one in particular that we are working with our friends on the Senate trying to find out if it's doable, is a proposal to actually raise the sales tax a little bit and then take the property taxes off of owner-occupied homes. So if you have a homeowner's exemption in your home, it would take away all of your property taxes except for things that you voted on, such as a bond, school bonds, or supplementals. It's a big idea. We've been floating around, but they're beginning to get quite a bit of support for that. And that would have a huge impact because you wouldn't need the circuit breaker because their property taxes, for the most part, would go away. It would help a lot, not only our seniors, but our young families. A lot of the things we talk about when property tax, I think it's important to remember. The state doesn't collect property taxes and the state doesn't spend property taxes. Those are all done at the local level. And when we try to find solutions for property taxes, I think it's important to remember that. One, that the state does its best to do no harm, but also remembering that those local guys make the decisions, not the state legislators. And I think that's important to remember. So as we look forward, we got to be careful, like I said, to do no harm. But as we try to find solutions, we also don't want to harm those taxing districts either. So it's a balancing act to make sure we can do both at the same time. And sometimes we can find solutions where sometimes we can't. But property tax is an issue that's not going to go away. And I think that it's important for people to realize that we're still working on it, and we're coming up with some pretty out-of-the-box solutions that, if we can find a path forward, would be very helpful for all of our citizens in the state of Idaho in regards to property tax relief.
That new bill that you discussed, before we go to Representative Rubel, the proposition of raising sales tax 2 cents to bring down property tax. What can you explain just the math on that, of how raising that one tax where we'd all pay more on the sales tax side would lead to greater property tax relief?
What it does is it raises the sales tax, the proposal, and this is all proposals. I think that's important to remember that it takes about 1.75 increase in the sales tax to remove the local government's portion and of the property tax on homeowners only. It's only homeowners. But you also have to have enough there for a surplus account to make sure that if we have a downturn, that we don't hurt them, that we can keep them harm, and that it's a growing revenue source, so it grows gradually as the population grows. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. But if you look at it and you do the numbers, most Idahoans who live in their home would far benefit from that. That the increase in the sales tax is a lot less of a burden on them than the property tax is. And it would also have spurred economic growth. Think about it this way. If your mortgage goes down because your property taxes that you're paying goes down, I mean, I've got people in my district now that are paying $800 a month to live in their home, which is absurd. If all of a sudden that $800 a month goes to $200 a month, their disposable income goes up by $600, and they're spending that, which actually spurs more purchases, more growth on the other side, and more sales tax back. So I think it's like I said, it's an out of the box idea. It's gaining steam. We visited with several House members today, so you're some of the first to learn about it. And there's a lot more support than I thought there was. Now the devil's in the details. We got a long ways to go, and hopefully we can come up with some ideas to make it work. There's a couple of drafts, but they change every time because, again, we want to make sure that we're not doing any harm either. So if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. and get the support of those taxing districts that are going to be part of the solution if we go down that route. But I think it's important we look at property taxes. We do look outside the box. We've done that before. It was very, very beneficial to the citizens of Idaho, and hopefully we can come up with a way forward to do the same thing again.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Rubell?
Yes, well, I hope that in this looking outside the box, one of the things I'll consider is allowing Democratic bills on property tax to be introduced, because that is something we have had no luck with in recent years. Actually, the Senate has aligned. There's been pretty good alignment with the Senate in terms of restoring the indexed homeowners exemption, increasing the circuit breaker in a manner that doesn't kick people off, but there are a lot of things that we would like to see happen, including allowing impact fees to be used for school construction. Again, taking a look at the indexed homeowners exemption. The internet sales tax is a big deal. That's a huge growing pot of money that right now is treated completely differently than regular sales taxes. You buy a shirt at a normal brick and mortar store, and a portion of your sales tax goes to your local government to pay for police and ambulance and fire and all that stuff. And the rest of it goes to the general fund, where it mostly goes to schools. You buy that same shirt online, you're still paying that 6% sales tax, so you're not going to save any money, but none of the money goes to schools or any need in your community. It doesn't go to police, it doesn't go to fire. And as internet sales grow and grow and grow, it's basically cannibalizing, the revenue that should be going to local government. And that is a driver of property taxes. So if we had simply treated internet sales tax like regular sales tax since 2020, when we started collecting it, that would have been $37 million that would have gone straight to local government. That would have basically been a dollar for dollar reduction of people's property taxes. So that is basically the state legislature driving people's property tax up by taking away money that would have otherwise gone to pay for local government needs. And when they don't receive their share of the internet sales tax, the only place those local governments have to turn to meet those basic functions of running a courthouse and a DMV and all that is through property tax. So a very easy thing for the legislature to do to instantly relieve property taxes would be to simply treat all sales tax the same. Whether you buy something in the store or whether you buy it online, that would instantly create pretty substantial property tax relief. Now, I have some legislation that I'm working on right now. We'll see if it goes anywhere. But the speaker, Speaker Batty, in another panel that we were on together, pledged to me in front of a room full of bankers that he would co-sponsor legislation with me to use that internet sales tax fund to lower the property tax. And so we're looking at ways to use that, well, first of all, to lower those county budgets through giving them their share of the tax and using the remainder potentially to pay down school bonds and levies, because don't forget, a lot of your property tax bill is actually coming from school bonds and levies. It has nothing to do with what local government's doing. In many parts of the state, it's like a third of your property tax bill is just payments on bonds and levies. So giving money to school districts to pay down those bonds and levies would also be a pretty quick and easy way to reduce people's property tax burden. And I think it's pretty in keeping with our state's obligation to provide a uniform and adequate system of education. I think, arguably that includes having an actual physical school building. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. I don't know. We have been turned down for hearings on just about all of those proposals from in-house revenue and taxation, but the session's not over yet. And I'm still hoping that the speaker's ready to make this deal with me that he promised he would. So we'll see what happens.
That's great. Now, Senator Stennett, I think you had a question about the proposed sales tax proposal that Representative Moyle is talking about. Would you like to ask that?
Yes, I just was curious because I was trying to find out more of the moving parts of Moyle's bill. When you increase sales tax, is that going to impact your sales tax on groceries? And therefore, are you increasing the taxes and the burden on those that are lower income in order to give relief to those who own homes? Is that is there something to provide a provision in there that will protect from that occurring?
Yeah, one of the proposals that we're looking at takes, there's extra money if you go to 2 cents, which gives you the ability to run the food credit up substantially higher. It gives back money for those. So that help offset the cost to those who don't own their homes because they would get a higher food credit. So yeah, there's part of that in there where we give back to those individuals to help offset that concern.
Thank you.
Very good. Now, this next question I have is it's kind of unique. I mean, we're redistricting, and I didn't look at the history if we see this kind of turnover every time our maps change of legislative precincts and districts. But there are some estimates that the Idaho legislature may lose up to 50% of our current legislators. And that kind of turnover can be a big disruption when we're talking about people that are, know the system, how it works, just how this all works. What do you guys see? Are there any concerns on your end as you look and see this new wave, new faces coming to the legislature for our next session? Oh, Senator Anthon, your mic is muted.
Sorry about that. No, I'd be happy to start a little bit on that.
Yeah.
I think it is when you're in majority leadership, you do get concerned about the makeup of what your caucus will look like in the next round. And certainly we all have our own elections to take care of once we leave the Capitol building. So those are concerns. But I will tell you this, and I do mean it sincerely, my experience in being the Idaho legislature is, as we've seen new faces, for the most part, I would tell you that these are good people. I have a really high confidence even in the turnover, that we will fill the halls of the Capitol building with really good Idahoans who actually really do care, and that they are really interested in good outcomes for the state of Idaho. I say this all the time whenever I speak, and I do mean it. And I also even throw the Democrats in there, if that can. I know it's hard to believe, because what I found is reasonable minds can disagree. And even those who disagree with me inside my own caucus or in the minority caucus, I know that they are trying to do what they think is the right thing to do. And so that gives me confidence that even with the turnover, we'll be fine. We'll see a good group of legislators in the next round.
I would probably jump in if I might. There's always a concern when we first have new people that they understand what the rules are and parliamentary process. And I know that you can do a freshman and get information by fire hose, but there are always hiccups in large turnovers, or in every election year, but this would probably be a larger turnover, where they understand what is or isn't allowed on the floor or in committee, or that they didn't get a mandate to run over the top of everybody in the building because they got elected, that there is a process. And it takes a lot of leadership and just making sure that the people who are teaching them and navigating them and mentoring them help them understand how to learn what it's like to be a legislator in the building. That said, most everything that we do now, we do well. The majority of stuff, the base of what we do well together across parties and across houses. There is the difficulty, as Representative Rubel mentioned, that and I would say Republican members feel too, that there isn't parity in what is allowed to be introduced and what's allowed to have a robust discussion and so on. And so when you do that, then you end up not giving voice to all parties from the district from which that person has been elected, not just Democrats or Republicans, everybody. We represent everyone. And so there should be a real effort that whoever comes has the ability to carry the voice of the people who elected them. And it doesn't matter who. So I think we need to remind that in the building. And it's important that people have an opportunity to present what their people wish. And then it's going to get voted up and down and debated as it should. And I think finally, parliamentary process is super important. And in my tenure there and watching my husband before me, which is now 33 years, which is horrifying, scary thought. But I've noticed a lot of evolution and change about what we think is proper in the building. And so there's going to be a need to make sure that those who come back understand what's expected of them and behave with civility and respectfulness. And that is something that us in the building need to make sure that we assure going forward stays intact.
Thank you. Representative Moyle, would you have something to add? Would you like to add something to this conversation?
No, but it's always, I guess maybe a little bit. It's always interesting when you have new turnover because you have the worry, and Senator Stennett brings up a good point. Once they learned how to work within the system, where the lines are and why those lines are there, one time they may hate them, but the next time it may protect them. But once they figure that out, they seem to excel and do really well. You saw that 10 years ago when we had on the House 30-member turnover, and I think you could see more than that this next election. But that 30 turnover, those 30 members that turned over, turned out to be a great thing for the House. It was new blood, things worked fine. And once they learned how to navigate, it was good. And like we've always said, the people coming here are coming here for a reason. They're well-liked, they're well-known, they're intelligent, and they come here to try to do what's best for the state of Idaho. And it's always a benefit to have new blood. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you.
Well, to be seen. I have no idea who these folks are that are going to be coming in. I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, but who knows? I'm a little sad because certainly, I've been here 8-9 years now and have had a chance to develop a lot of relationships across the aisle with folks that I'm really, really going to miss, and people that I just admire and are wise and brave. And I think it does take a little while to develop some bravery around here, for lack of a better word. I think, folks who have been here a few years have a little bit more self-assurance in terms of feeling that they can, stand their ground and not have to bow to the, whatever pressures might hit them to not go with their instincts. So I think there will be some loss in that in terms of losing people who have been here, 10, 12, 14 or more years, and who really have developed that confidence to just, go with their instincts in all cases and not bow to pressures. And I just personally am going to miss some of those friendships. But there is a lot to be said for new blood and new energy and new ideas. So we will see how it all plays out when the new batch gets here.
No, I really appreciate that. One of the things that Senator Stennett said about addressing bills in committee and giving more bills that to be aired in committee so the public can make comments. What's your impression? I'm going to put you all, you're all to be the Speaker of the House, you're the pro tem of the Senate. You're trying to organize a session that'll end in a timely manner. How many more bills can you get out and let be debated on the floor and still end, before April? Because that's one of the things I wonder about. I know that some bills are personal bills that have not been vetted to a collaborative group. They don't have the numbers they need to be passed, and so committee members will sit on those, or committee chairs might sit on those, not let them go forward. But what if we had a policy that said everyone's bills are getting heard? Would we be able to get out by April?
Well, can I clarify a little bit about why I said that? Just because some of the bills that come before us that are allowed to be heard, we learn are poorly written, are not ready for prime time. Some of them are unconstitutional. Many of them are redundant, where one side's starting it and the other side's starting it instead of doing it together, and they're basically similar language. That sort of thing can be weeded out. If it has real merit, and it should at least get a print hearing so that you can have a discussion about it. But we go through all of the motions and the time to do things that we know are not going to get any traction for political conversation or maybe issue conversation. And is that appropriate use of time? I mean, these are good questions, but it is something that we should maybe give a little more solid boundaries about what will or won't for all sides, to be able to know what they bring is going to at least get a discussion.
Jeremy, I'll just jump into this. I agree with Senator Stennett on the fact that many of the bills that you see being printed, they're just not ready for prime time. It's not an efficient use of taxpayer dollars or time to chase after some of those. I mean, the answer to your question is no, you could not get everything done by April 1st if you heard every bill that was drafted in the Idaho legislature. I mean, last year we had over 900 bills. I think we ended up passing just, somewhere in about 350 zone. So the answer is no. I think just practically speaking, if you heard every single bill. The fact of the matter is that in many instances, they are not ready. And so that costs money and that costs time. And I think that some of the arguments that I hear that every bill should be heard. Now, I will tell you this. I've always taken the position inside my caucus that if there's a member of my caucus that wants a bill printed, they should get it printed. I'm kind of one of those guys that errs on the side of let's hear as many as we can. But the truth of the matter is that it wouldn't be practical to hear every single bill that's ever drafted.
Yeah. So I can jump in. I mean, I just don't know that, you know, I would not buy into the notion that the system we have right now ensures that the good bills with lots of support get hearings and that the bad bills that aren't ready for prime time end up in drawers. It is not a very clean correlation. We had a bill last year for property tax relief that had 59 co-sponsors and couldn't get a hearing in committee. So there are actually things that have broad-based support, but there's, you know, I have a bill on criminal justice reform that's passed the House with a supermajority 3 times and can't get a hearing on the Senate because, you know, there's a single person who doesn't like it and doesn't want to give it a hearing. So, you know, there isn't a lot of correlation right now between, and as Senator Stennett said, there are ridiculous bills that are on their face totally unconstitutional that easily get hearings and can sail through. So it's, you know, I think the system is a little bit broken. Again, when a bill with 59 co-sponsors can never see the light of day or even get printed, there's a systemic problem going on there. That said, I actually brought a bill a few years ago to say that any bill that had at least 5 co-sponsors from each party should get a hearing. So that would be, I thought, a kind of way to thread the needle of, you know, no, we're not going to hold full hearings for everything, but at least ideas that have, you know, some base of, you know, breadth of support and bipartisan support should get a hearing. And of course, ironically, my bill didn't get a hearing to allow bills to
Did it have 5 sponsors from each party?
It did. Yeah. So, you know, I would like to see there be, you know, some better resolution as to what gets hearings, because I think right now there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. It's just a single person serves as a gatekeeper, and that person may decide to let terrible bills through and block good bills or vice versa. It's a little bit arbitrary.
That speaking to just the strengths and weaknesses of our legislative system, yeah, I think that's a really interesting comment. Representative Moyle, did you want to say anything on this topic?
No, it's an interesting topic. We talk about it often on the House because there's concerns. But I would remind people a couple things. One, sometimes people will get in the press and say their bill does one thing, but it really doesn't. I think that's why you heard the comments from Senator Stennett about sometimes they're unconstitutional or don't accomplish what they think they're going to accomplish. We've seen that a lot this year. We've had bills pulled back because they've come out of committee with the presumption they did one thing, they did something else, or they had issues in them. And I think, too, you need to remember why the process sometimes is uncomfortable and not to our liking. It cuts both ways. There's other times it benefits us, and sometimes it doesn't benefit us. But if we learn to work together, and you saw that today, there's ways to bridge the gap. I've got some bills with Senator Stennett, one with Representative Gannon. I think there's ways as we try to find solution to work together. When you can find those paths forward where you can get agreement, it makes it a lot harder on those chairmen to hold those bills, and it makes it a lot harder on them to play games with them. So I think you got to remember that the process works. It's not always perfect, but at least it accomplishes the goal it needs to. And if we learn to work within the process, it usually works out pretty good.
Thank you very much. So we're winding down on this conversation, but there's a slew of, and maybe I should go back to being big here for a second. There's a slew of bills out there that are addressing voter reforms. I just wanted to get your ideas on you know, and I'm not drilling down to one bill. There's a bill, you know, that's out there that suggests that people can't change, or if you're unaffiliated voter, you can't become a member of a party the day you go and vote. But there's different options out there. And I was just wondering, what do you guys think the chances are of those passing? And then, you know, if we are talking about more of a national discussion with these bills, or if they're addressing Idaho-specific problems that we've seen in our system. And who'd like to start on that one?
I'll go ahead because Senator Anthon and I are on state affairs, and those voter bills come before us. I can speak to the Senate ones, which most of them are good, solid reinforcement of an excellent election process. I want to give a shout out that a couple of years ago during the election process, we were in the middle of changing software. We were in the middle of COVID. We were trying to allow things to happen that we hadn't before because we really wanted the voters to be able to participate because the circumstances were beyond their control. And this is what we should be doing is encouraging the electorate out there to have a say in their government. They did an extraordinary job considering all the constraints, and everybody that judged how we did our elections, we were like the second best in the country. And so we, there are some hiccups that maybe a clerk didn't recognize something happened, but fraudulence it's just not prevalent in our election process. That said, the Secretary of State has brought to the Senate anyway, some bills to reconfirm transparency, to firm up some procedures. So a lot of what we've seen, and in particular as it pertains to the ethics and transparency in elections, is they want to include a random auditing on a regular basis for larger and smaller populated counties, so that they can prove that the numbers that they had were the numbers that they were, and make sure that people feel reassured that that the election process was proper. And we're one of the few states that doesn't offer that, and so I commend them for wanting to take the extra effort on and the manpower, which is proper and appropriate, to make sure that we have the opportunity to check in every once in a while to our counties and give clerks the ability to show the good work that they're doing. So much of what we've seen has been that. I will not speak for the House. I'll let them speak.
Very good. Representative Moyle, would you like to address that?
Sure. I think that in Idaho, we want to make sure that voting is easy, but it's secure. And I think that you're going to see a lot of bills, especially on the House side. And I think on the Senate side too, because you're seeing them now, is we've tried to make sure we cover some of the holes that we think are in our voting, when people vote. I think with the general election coming up this fall, there's more of an incentive to do that. We also have a whole bunch of people running for Secretary of State, so they've all got their bills too. So that's been kind of entertaining to watch. But I think anything we can do to make voting more secure while keeping it easy is a good thing. And I think you'll see quite a few more bills in the House in the coming week or so, because there's a few more issues out there, I think, that will get hearings. And then we'll see how they pan out as they go between the two bodies.
Very good.
So I have some concerns about there's some good things. I think the audit is fine, but generally, I would love to see Idaho legislation being driven by Idaho issues and not national narratives that emerge on the national media scene. In terms of Idaho, there are zero zilch issues. There hasn't even been a whiff, as far as I'm aware, of fraudulent voting or people who shouldn't be voting, anything like that. We have a model system that is pretty darn easy to vote. I mean, and I think it shows that it shouldn't be a liberal Republican issue, because we've had, very ready access to the polls, and, Republicans have been winning every office. So I don't think they have to worry that, that we need to really clamp down on elections or Democrats will win or something. And Republicans seem to be doing just fine under an easy access system. But I'm seeing some bills coming up that I'm very concerned about, that I think are really going to make it much harder for people to vote. And that I think have disproportionate impact on the people for whom it will be harder to vote. So for example, there's a bill being brought in the State Affairs Committee that would say that, you can't use student IDs to register, but you can use a concealed gun permit. Well, it's kind of steering, the people, the particular populations who will have a little easier time voting than others will. And that really feels like an abuse of the process to me. I am concerned about a bill that made it through State Affairs the other day that has been a very similar bill, has been attacked in other states. It would make it a crime to deliver people's ballots for them. And this would just—
That's a good bill.
With disabilities, elderly people on tribal reservations, and so that's one that I have concerns about as well. So some of these I'm really worried, because they are going to make it harder for particular populations to vote as compared to others. And I would hate to see our election laws veer in a direction where they just become a finger on the scale for who can vote more easily than others.
Well, I don't think it makes it harder. I think it makes it more secure, but we can have that debate offline.
That's great. Senator Anthon, would you like to add to this discussion?
The only thing I would add is I want to just echo one message, and that is that Idaho does a good job. Our local counties are doing a good job on conducting these elections. I agree. We've seen audits take place on a smaller scale, and they've always proven that, in fact, our local county clerks and officials are doing a great job. I agree with Representative Moyle. I mean, to the extent we can improve the security of those elections, and in my opinion, the more that we can get people to vote, the better. So I've not been too crazy about restrictions on allowing people to vote. But security is key, because we have to protect the integrity of those elections, make sure that the people who are voting are who they say they are, and that we are making sure that we don't undermine the whole process and the whole rule of law by getting too loose with how we conduct these elections.
Well, make sure I come back over here. We're up on our time. And we're so grateful for you taking time out of your business schedule to join us here at the Chamber. Deep respect for our local officials. When you decide to run for office, a lot of your life you just get to wear a target on your back for decisions that you make. Your friends, you take every opportunity to. All your friends are going to be mad about something that you do. The people who didn't like you in the first place are going to get even angrier. It's not an easy part-time job. And so at the Chamber, we're very grateful for your dedication to step into public service and to, not be afraid to take the arrows when you're going about policy discussions. So thank you so much for your service and being part of this discussion today. I wanted to, before we, and we're gonna end here, I wanted to give Senator Stennett the last word, but before we do that, I want to say a big thank you to our sponsors, presenting sponsor Optum, as well as AT&T and our media partners that bring out this conversation to even broader audience. But thank you so much for your support. Without you, this discussion wouldn't be possible. But Senator Stennett, you mentioned it's 33 years between you and your husband representing your district, and we're going to have a lot of new people come into the office next year. And with all that wonderful insight behind you, what's your top word of advice for the people coming into session next year?
Well, I would first say some people think that they're probably dancing in the streets that a Stennett finally is in office. But no, I think what has kept the body together is relationships. I know that even though people outside of the building always say that it is so hateful and contentious, and it just isn't that way. I can speak for the House. My colleagues over in the House have been wonderful, and of course, and I mean this with complete sincerity, I adore the people that I work with in the Senate. We are friends. We'll disagree. We won't vote together. But on occasion, but we do things well together. And if there's anything that is the most important part of this is to have the public understand that we're doing the best work that we can do. And really in the end, it's our relationship with them and our relationship with the people in the building that people will remember and are the most important. So as you come in to visit and participate and come and testify, and as you decide to be a member of the legislature, just remember to be civil and respectful. We're just doing the best we can do, and that we really are people caring for people, and we do that all in our own different ways and personalities and with the talents that we have. And I think it's important for people to recognize that that's how we do our work.
All right. Sorry it took me so long to switch over to you. I was enjoying the discussion so much. I was negligent on my producer.
No, I like the little square. I prefer the little square.
I like it a lot better too. But thank you so much again for your time, and thank you for everyone who's participated in this and will participate online. So with that, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.